Okay, let's start the stream. So I have couple SNCs and one MTT on the bottom left, currently on the break. Well, the MTT I late registered and have doubled up pretty much. There was one nice guy who opened King 10 off on the UTC and called my almost 20 PP shove. Happened to win with ace jack suited tier and then on one small spot here before the play. Oh, it doesn't. Here it is. So pretty standard spot. Overall, we lane open raise button. I called check, called flop and turn, and river went check. So that's pretty much what has happened. What happens here, and on the outer table, I could actually move it visible here, as that one game is not running yet. So let's move that on the outer side. So in here, I won pretty big pot. Let's try to semi-bluff here. Also, if it's hard, it's not that bad to barrel the river if the call comes. So in here, defended. Yeah, it was actually a limp spot, so no really need to defend per se, but just calling that 3-bet obviously. And we are way too deep to really go for any sort of 4-bet stack of that type of stuff. Decided to see bet here because our hand is so often best one. I think I call here and let's see if he might be now firing. So I think I still call once. If he barrels third time, I fold. But luckily he didn't. That's pretty weird line, to be honest. I mean, if you check ace jack, I suppose he should be just check calling. I don't see too much point in raising overall. Because the question is what stronger hand he gets to fold, pretty much. At least with that min check raise alone. Of course, if he had triple barrel here, then I would probably have folded that. At least if he doesn't make really small bet. But yeah, in this hand, so I checked here. This guy's C or lead C bet, whatever it was, limp spot. And small blind called. I have a double gut shot here, so we definitely have option to raise or call. Folding would obviously be totally absurd. I decided to raise here this time. Only downside of this is pretty much that if we face 3-bet, we still have to fold. This guy folds, this guy calls. We hit the jackpot. Bet around half pot and obviously shove the river. In the MTT I will shove the 9-7, especially with the blinds, it's definitely plus EV. And this guy shoved here, so we are happily calling with the nuts, and he had the 7-5, so a lot stronger draw than I had on the flop, but luckily he played it passive and I managed to hit that sort of card. I will just shove the queens here. Not really anything else to do in that spot. And we don't hold, unfortunately. River. So, if you want to give any comments, questions, talk about anything at all, use the YouTube chat. No free flop this time. Pocket fives. Folding is bit weak against the min raise from the cutoff. Only question is, I think I just go for the shove. There is small chance that the BB wakes up, but it's relatively small. I mean, I could also 3-bet like 600 and basically call against this guy, but oh well. Running into nuts. This guy min betting, but yeah, it's still 3-way pot, so would have hit the river. It's just that is the 8 good or not, and so on. So standard defend on the bottom left, and will be check folding. Check folding without any sort of real draw. Like if I had ace of diamonds here, then calling would be totally reasonable. But without it, I would just give up. Yeah. I think I just fold here. It will be totally horrendous hand to just squeeze here, but pretty risky play overall. I mean, I would have to make like something like over 3,000 here. And king queen suited I would have called against the small blind shove. And if this guy makes 3-bet, this is pretty nice hand as suited to just call from position and take the flop. I mean, shoving wouldn't be horrible either, but problem is that usually the big blind 3-betting range tends to be quite polarized. Well, I think I can't really call the flop with just backdoor flush draw and 2 overs. If he had made it a bit smaller, then I think calling would be reasonable. And worst possible river pretty much. Bit check folding, and especially against that sizing. Might be going tomorrow to listen to Q stock music concert. I think this is the English word. So I don't have the ticket, but we have a boat, so it's on the island. So I think we might get close enough. Though problem is that there was some warning on the local newspaper about some sort of don't know about the English word, but Finnish it's uppotukki. 6-5 suited, I would just shove against 15 big blind or 16 big blind. So it's basically those, I think, trees underwater that have stuck here, so they are lifting them up, and it's kind of dangerous that they might be floating with the currents here around the place that we were planning to go, so might be the best idea to not go and not take the risk that some sort of tree happens to hit the side of the boat or something. But have to see. Checking is allowed on the top left, and pocket aces on the MTT. Pretty crappy port run, but c-betting doesn't make too much sense because the lane can continue with so much stuff overall. And no action to aces. Five eight would be pretty much the worst hand I would defend here. Really small sizing on the bottom right, but the hand is so crappy. Lucky for me that the villain didn't double barrel here. On the bottom left with the open-ended straight draw. Let's try to limp. It's not really strong enough to shove or raise. This is kind of an interesting flop because I just folded here against pot size bet. Because obviously villain can have a lot of stuff here, but the thing is that should have called that one. We actually have some showdown value. Some showdown value with the queen high itself. And let's go for bet and hope that he rolls with some sort of two pair or something. On the bottom right I could have also limped, but if I don't really have any reads about the opponent, I tend to prefer raising, because overall people tend to be somewhat passive against the limping. But obviously something that you can mix into limping range. Just checking with the king 9 doesn't make too much sense to c-bet here, but once he makes 1/3 bet sizing here, I think I just go for the raise. Yeah, he might have better, but there are a lot of draws. He might easily have 6x, 8x. I think 10-5 off is, you can defend it, but it's not really that awesome. In 3-betting, well, let's defend with this crap. And turn the bottom two pairs and going to shove here. Jesus. Oh well. It wasn't quite as good as I thought. quite a irony in a way. I think we can raise for value on the MTT. And hitting the nuts. If I bet 400, there is going to be a bit below pot size on the river if he calls. And I suppose he's probably going to stack off quite often to shove with these stack sizes. So, well, that was nice setup on the other way around. And also something to note about that earlier hand, that he was min 3-betting with 6-7 offsuit. So at least we don't have to be that worried about him just having some sort of nuts. Kind of interesting flop. I just fold, especially against that sizing. And on the MTT I have to call with those pot odds. And yeah, I think I just raise here. Still the MTT, we have strong top pair. And there are some draws we can definitely have. Of course, he did 3x pre-flop, so it will decrease somewhat of those, like 5-6 combos and such, but can be still raising at least some plus draws. And again losing the flip. And a7 with the 3 BB is going to be pretty much nuts. Oh well, let's take one more 10 euro, because those 25 euros doesn't seem to start currently. Just checking with the ace-10, because betting doesn't achieve that much. Oh. Unfortunately, we landed in 3-bet that one. Yeah, it's totally fine to flat some of the AXs with that sort of stack depth. We flop and flopping bottom 2. Will peel on the bottom right, because I think there is decent sense that like queen high might be the best hand. Okay, I somehow misread my hand. Jesus, buy the better eyeglasses. Well, I somehow thought that I had 5-3, but I actually had 9-3. Don't ask how that was possible. And yeah, he had. I will go for delayed c-bet on the top left. Hand is often best one. How the heck did I think that I have 5-3? Oh well. Maybe buying new glasses would be a good idea. And this guy's min raising against my limp. But probably losing that hand, unless, well, of course our king high might be good if we get to showdown. And it actually is. I will go for limp on the top left, and if he raises like 3x, I can definitely. Well, it's not super great spot, but I can limp shove. And let's see, but well, this is so shallow stacked that I think I just shove with the suited king. I don't really want to be playing hit or fold, and king is not enough. Did they actually fold on the top right? I think they did. I shoved like 2.5 pp or something. Might be ahead. Probably not anymore. And no hit. This seems quite familiar on the pre-flop all-in runs from recent times. Probably don't get AX to fold at least, but we could have tried to see bet on the flop and take down weaker than AX. Pretty fizzy guy, ace 5 off call against UTG open. Well, it's 5-handed, but it's still pretty horrible. Pretty horrible call pre-flop. And problem is that that sort of players probably won't be folding any AX. Not that I would have really tried to. This would be an S call, but I think I just give up still. Well, 4x open, just folding. I think I call here with the gut shot. Queen or 10 might be good, and we also have backdoor flush draw, and this is pretty decent spot now to bet myself. The question is the sizing. We have bit our pot size, so I think I go for just shoving. We can do it with flushes, king x. Mandatory shove hand. And let's take another 25 euro, moving those tables now. This guy, is he sitting out? He isn't. The good thing is that if he was sitting out, he would be auto-folded against the limp as well, so you don't necessarily have to raise against the sit-out player. Raising with the queen jack, and I will make light raise on the top left against the limp. Well, I don't think this is, well, not the greatest flop obviously, but it's pretty dry, so we should have decent fold equity. But I will just check back here and see the river. And the question now is, do we want to shove or call? I think it's more likely that he has some sort of jack x than better than that, so, and those might call, so think I have to shove it here. It's good that we didn't get the snap call at least. I think I go for a really small bet on the MTT. Should be somewhat unlikely that he has better hand. And top left, obviously, have to call with that one. And only split out after turn. And 120. There is definitely some argument in just raising. I actually go for the raise. Doesn't look that strong, and there are a lot of draws I can get value from. This is the downside. Well, of course there are a lot of still busted draws, but oh Jesus, nasty spot in the 4.5x3, but this feels ultra nitty, but let's fold. I mean, calling out of position to see the flop with that price is pretty expensive, but at the same time I don't really want to be shoving here for over like 45 big blinds or something. And have to call on the top right. Obviously not ultra great situation, but problem is that villain can easily be overplaying weaker AXs as well, so we actually beat some of the value hands here. And 9-10 did complete, but we need to be ahead like 1 out of 4 times chip EV wise, so I don't think we can really fold. And he had total airball. Total airball donation. And usually in the heads up when it's that deep, I will tend to min raise for most of my range. Just fold it here. From the big blind I would call, but just checking the ace-7, especially when we have the backdoor. Backdoor flush draw, there is a lot more playability on the turns overall. Not quite straight. Extremely good pot odds on the top left, but bottom left. But well, let's call. Problem is that the hand is pretty crappy. Pretty crappy for three-way action. And I will just fold here. We only can count like 5 outs and we don't necessarily even have that always, so and it's pretty unlikely that our hand is the best one on the flop. I suppose it might sometimes be, but extremely unlikely. And we hit 2 pairs. Problem is that our lane range is relatively weak, so I will go with smallish sizing. Oh well. I don't know if I can fold here. It's not totally out of question that he might sometimes do that with. Would he raise that big with any weaker 2 pairs? Problem is that there is 9, 10 and flush draw completing. Well, might be nitty, might be nitty. Well, we can definitely raise here, but I think I just call this time to balance the calling range. And let's make donk bet with open ender. No hit, we actually got even more outs. Well, he has the flush draw as well in the MTT. I was thinking about adding the usual webcam stuff. I could do that, but I think I have to make the tables a little bit smaller if I want to include it. I think in this sort of situation, the MTT, I kind of like more to defend with this sort of 6-7 compared to something like King 8 or something like that. And we have the bluff catcher. There is absolutely no reason to be value betting here. And obviously not a great situation, but I mean, if we fold this one, we are folding huge portion of our range. So let's call, and kind of like totally unnecessary stuff again from the villain. He reversed the top pair, so he's beating a decent portion of my range still here. So turning that hand into bluff doesn't really make any sense in my opinion. And can't really call 16 pp, so with the crappy ace, something like, well, ace 10, ace 9 I would probably call. Okay, I was planning to check back, but After that, it's pretty clear decision. King is actually quite blank card overall. I will go for check call here because there are a ton of busted draws. Of course, he might have also some king x, queen x with hearts. Maybe sometimes just like king high that he called on the flop, but I think I still called here. 3 outer on the turn. I don't know, to me it's somewhat optimistic to make that sort of call because you don't really even have, you might not have all the king x as good cards either with the flush draw. I will go for barrel here with the decent blockers and some equity. And I think this guy was, at least the nick is somewhat familiar feeling, so he might be one of those players that don't change their nick. And flopping the nuts. Hopefully he bombs again. And he does. And just calling here, this is like most reasonable slow play hand. And possible, hoping that there is no 10 or jack, as those can easily kill action. Well, now there is the jack. I think I go for like half pot, and I don't know if I shove, he might be folding out like even some 2 pairs maybe. Well, if he doesn't, then I think shoving is definitely the best option, but he might be. And check calling queen 8 has decent playability. And this time decided to trap with the kings. I think the kings is so good that I can actually go for the limp call, just hoping that it doesn't put the AX flop. Well, that's not the greatest, but pretty decent, and especially when he shoves, it's extremely unlikely he has the trips. I mean, that way I can have some of the trappy hands in the limp calling range as well. Like if you have pocket tens or something, it's much better hands to be just limp shoving. This should be pretty decent hand to call because we don't really block any of the possible semi bluffs. And And let's go for the let's see, but the problem is that I'm probably most scared about queen x in a way. That they might take the check calling line here. Yeah. I just give up. Oh, just 10x. Just 10x. That would have probably folded. Not connecting on the flop at any way, and I think this guy seems somewhat like a person that doesn't want to give up on the pots that easily, so pretty clear decision to just check fold. Talked about making like 3-bet shove on the outer table with the suited ace. And on the top left, I think I go for bet here, and if he calls, then betting the river as well. Unfortunately, we don't improve, but we have kind of played best possible blocker overall. So let's try. Fold. Good button. Nice, nice. Nice, nice. Pretty decent looking spot for this guy on the MTT to shove with the open raise and 2 callers. If having anything decent. We probably want to 3-bet here and try to get the pot down with the gut shot and overcard and backdoor flush draw. Well, this guy shouldn't have that many 9x's, I suppose. So I think I try to double barrel here and put some pressure on the, like maybe some of the weaker queen x might be folding, or some sort of pocket pair. Ace-9 suited is actually kind of interesting hand. I will call with the king-9, it's just 5 pp. But unfortunately he had better. Because I definitely don't want to raise small, because if he shoves I can't really call down. At the same time shoving, if I shove I probably only get called by the better some sort of trapping hand most of the time, so it's quite reasonable to just check back and keep it in the checking range. Well, I'm not too familiar about the MTT situations here, but I think pocket 3s is bit too weak, but something like at least pocket 5s or so would be the ISO sovereign in the ISO sovereigns. I don't think it makes too much sense to go for that small pocket pair. And let's barrel on the top left. Okay, he probably has the queen x quite often. I think in that spot that is actually pretty decent triple barrel hand, because one, you don't block the flush draw. Well, you do block some of the straight draws, but it also blocks the most kind of reasonable queen x combos. Like king queen, queen jack. On the upper right, it was actually flopped that. I think checking is also fine in that stack situation, because getting check raised is really crappy thing. And on the top right, I will shove here. Villain has like 8 big blinds, so king jack is decent enough. And on the bottom right, calling that one. And facing better hand everywhere. Not winning on the top right. I was going to check call, but he makes it pot size, so let's just give up. Well, on the bottom left, it's, well, Lane might have the 4x, of course. The question is, do we want to go for shove? There are 2 busted flush draws, but of course I won't be really bluffing that often, but I think I just go for the shove, and if he has the 4x, he might be calling really often, and maybe he raw calls sometimes with weaker. I mean, it's kind of spot that, well, maybe he has some AX with the flush draw that he calls, but usually weaker flush draws will be folding on that turn. It's also a reason why I think that checking the turn is somewhat reasonable. That way you allow Villain to perhaps try to bluff on the river. And we have the best hand pretty often here, but Villain didn't bet. Is the stream working? At least no dropped frames, so it should be. On the bottom left I would have called against the shove, and when he limps I will just shove and basically hope that he is folding. Sometimes he's limp calling with something weaker, but problem is obviously that ace deuce is not really dominating anything. Pretty unlikely he's calling with king deuce or something. I suppose everything is possible though, but well, let's go for small c-bet on the top left. It's still pair board, so decently try. I could sometimes for 3-bet with the king 9 suited, but it just folds this time. I suppose calling might be kind of okay from position with the suited hand. And usually I don't make any like 3-bets with those like a7 crappy offsuit aces. Of course you have the blocker value, but outside of that it's pretty crappy overall. Like if you get called, there is pretty much no possible playability, you can say. Even if you hit the ace, you don't really know if you should be happy about it or not. Just checking here, I'm not that scared about the ace, but it's somewhat tough to get three street of value anyway, so 6 is bit crappy because 5-4 type of hand did complete, but problem is that we then might be value betting 7x sometimes, might be some bluffs sometimes, so I think I call here. Of course he has the trips. That's pretty unfortunate. And let's make smallish c-bet on the MTT, really dry a high flop, so and we actually have some backdoor stuff. Luckily they fold. And I don't really like to raise here on the bottom right. Extremely dry flops. Of course we can have some like gutshot type of hand that we might check raise, but I usually don't like to make those moves either on the high flops because the lane still has pretty decent range advantage. And practical nuts on the top right. And lane is 2.5xing, giving great risk reward. $17 more needs to drop out on the MTT to get into monies. In pretty good position at this point. Well, on the bottom right, 7-8 suited is pretty nice hand to defend. I did hit the flush draw, but the problem is that his king high is not the greatest really. I think I just check back here, and because I really don't want to bet, and if he then checks shoves, that would be pretty crappy. So let's take a free equity. And we actually hit the 8, which might be sometimes good. If he makes like half pot, it's going to be clear call, because I would often believe that I'm probably behind if he bets, but we have so many outs that kind of have to call. If he bets the river, it's very often going to be for value, so I would probably have folded. King 5 off. Yep. great hand to be 3-betting tier. Just awesome. Just awesome. I suppose on the bottom left here would be some argument about check shoving the flop as well, and I will be limp calling here. That's pretty much the worst possibility. But I mean queen 10 with that sort of stack depth, it's going to be pretty strong to be limp folded. And just check calling with the ace deuce. That way he might try to represent the AX and we might get him to bluff sometimes. Of course, if he has like king high, he should be just checking. Well, queen 3 in the Nash would probably be pretty close. At least before this guy was also limping in quite similar situations, so tends to give a bit more credit when he shoves. Kind of interesting spot on the bottom right. I think I actually try to go for really small value bet, because we still have a pretty good kicker with our 9x. But it's pretty scary board, obviously, for anything weaker to call, but at the same time we'll lane quite rarely has like 2 pair or better either. He might have sometimes some sort of better 9x or 10x. And let's go for, well, I think it's pretty much best to just shove on the top left with that stack depth against that sizing. If he had made it like 1/3 of the pot, I would check raise smaller and so on, but against that sizing it's kind of questionable to be check raising small and folding with much at all. Nasty setup. One nasty setup. let's bet with ace 4. Sort of problem if we check is that this hand is not that great to be calling. Or it has not that much possibility to improve. Like if I had ace 8, ace 9, I would much more happily to check behind, because hitting into 9 or 8 is going to be better. Bigger portion of time. And we can also turn some straight draws and so on. Of course we had like really small backdoor flush draw, but that's going to be again kind of like if you manage to hit the backdoor flush draw, it's not going to be that great either. A huge shove on the bottom right overall. Well, with over 20 pp. Top right, pretty standard call. On the top right, if the button min raises or 2.5x's, I will be shoving the queen jack suited. And if it's folded, it's bit. I think I will just shove still, because like if I limp and big blind shoves, it's going to be so nasty overall. Of course that is not that great option either, because the risk reward is pretty crappy. Just can't hit. Just can't hit. And I will shove with the suited ace. It's not quite as good as normal situation, because this guy is so short that he can't be really min raise folding against him, but it doesn't mean that he can't have folding range against me. But of course he has the nuts. Yeah, it could have been folded as well, but it's a reasonable hand to shove anyway. And one of the good sides is that even if the villain has that sort of pocket pair, you still have a decent amount of equity. Pocket deuces will be just open shove, and if the well, I don't really want to shove over 30 pp deep, and calling is not really that great either. I kind of need to call on the top left, because this guy was making like min 4 bet. Blah. That was nasty timing. Well, I think I go for check raise and just go with it on the top bottom left. We didn't bet. Well, I don't know, it's kind of crappy hand to bet the river anymore. Got €50 game running as well. Previous time I played this MTT €25, I managed to get the direct bubble boy position. Hopefully not that end result this time. And turning 2 pairs on the top right. Kind of crappy, but I still try to bet on the smaller side. And snap calling with that sort of hand was kind of interesting. Seems like we'll lane that I definitely don't want to be bluffing that much. A high might be good on the, though we have really weak A high. So it wasn't quite enough. Call with 5-7. Oh well. I think I just go for limp shove. Winning all in. Tough thing to do. Tough thing to do. With the flat caller, this is actually quite situation that I think I just go for shove. Just all 8,500 of the pot already, so we get pretty great risk reward and run into nuts, of course. Oh well, not bubble ball this time. So that was the MTT for this session. Without the flat caller, I would have just called here with the ace jack. Well, let's try to bluff 8x or queen x. 8x or queen x out of the pot. Checking back the trips. Someone might describe that as nitty. I don't know, maybe he didn't notice that he had the trips. Be great price, but the thing is, if I call it here, this wreck guy will be calling behind me extremely often, and then I'm going to be in sandwich situation. Some hope that the 10x might have been good. Well, let's raise with the deuce 9. That was a bit crappy flop. Well, let's try delayed C, but it's not really disaster if he happens to be limp shoving the turn here. And I kind of want to shove, but well, let's take the safe option. And practical nuts on the 50 euro. Unfortunately, no call. And I will just bet here. I mean, if I check, Villen will be pretty often checking back to most of his range, maybe bluffing some straight draws and such, but and then just shoving the river. Seven deuce. That's definitely, well, he did have the 7 of hearts, but look at 6 is actually really close, really close. I'm not totally sure about that. If it's good or not. I mean, a little bit better, and definitely we have to go with it. And from pickle blind, it would have been somewhat easier call, but now we also had the pretty deep stack Villen behind. So it might have been a bit too loose as well. just raise on the top right to put some ICM pressure on the clear mid stack, though it's still four-handed, so it might not be very effective compared to bubble situation. Well, let's open. I call if the big blind shove, but hopefully he doesn't. Hopefully he doesn't shove. Just, I think this hand is still so strong overall that I don't really want to just open fold either. Oh, that was pretty crappy. Crappy flop. I'm not that worried about bottom having anything here really, but more about the big blind. And top left, pretty mandatory. Barreling spot, not blocking the king X either. Or pretty much anything that can continue here. And that was the river to hope for, most likely. Very sizable turn bet on the bottom left, and my hand is not really going to improve most of the time, so. And extremely small 3 bet on €50. Not quite min 3 bet, but almost. Almost. One sizable bet, but I don't really think I can fold pair plus open-ended straight draw. It's pretty decent flop on the upper right, because Finland really extremely rarely has AX tier, considering how shallow the stacks were pre-flop. So of course he's not folding Queen X to single bet, obviously, but it decreases the chances that he has something. Yeah, I was thinking about just shoving pre-flop exactly for this sort of situation. I will just check, because I don't really think Willen will be folding any better hand on the to c-bet, but of course the downside is that he might be bluffing me. So it's not quite black and white. Whatever to check or c-bet is better. Yeah, quite unfortunate flop, but that's the downside of that sort of pocket pair, that even though its pocket 10 is pretty high, there is still decent amount of time to overcards coming and so on. And of course, even like, especially a high flop is not really going to be that awesome. The outer table, I see that small flop will then call, so I check the turn with the plan to call the river most of the time, but now I actually hope that the villain has the queen X, and he does. That was one nice river. I mean, the main point why I played the turn like that was that it's not necessarily that easy to get 3 streets of value from anything weaker. It's possible, of course, but it's somewhat marginal. See, but on top left there is decent amount of turns that I can then double barrel. Just shoving the queen 10, don't really want to be limp folding. I actually don't think I have that much showdown value with the king 10, so let's try to see bet some AX to fold maybe some pocket 5s or something. So I think that sort of hand would probably shove pre-flop. Oh well, kind of nasty hand on the outer table, €50. And the top pair versus middle set. Top left can't really fold pair plus flush draw. And have to call the ace 10, which seems to hold, and ace 9 is strong enough to ISO shove. And running into nuts. And we have a lot of action now on every table. This is the tricky part when you get more tables, because then you might have some heads ups running on and some three-handed, so quickly it's actually quite hectic. Quite hectic even with 6-7 tables. Queen 9 is really close, but let's fold with the suited, of course, shoving Queen 10 I would shove. And one big pot on the outer table. Had the set on the flop and villain had the top pair. Usually I don't like to shove these crappy AXs that much against the limp because it's actually quite easily dominated and like more often I will be like shoving, for example, Queen deuce suited because those Queen X's are going to be less often dominated compared to King X's. Looking good on the top right. Let's take that 25 euro, it's in the bubble. And had to call King Jack, I only had like 7 big blinds or something. And he had bit better King X. And just shoving, well, I suppose you can limp call or something, but well, let's go for raise here on the upper right. We don't have, well, some showdown value with King High, but we have some nice backdoors here. And we got into heads up into 50 euro. Quite suddenly it seems from the four-handed. Not sure what happened here. Oh yeah, it was this. This situation when this guy ISO raised on the ISO raised and here was 4-bet and he called and Ace-3 went all in. Well, he actually had the AX. These are a bit awkward situations in my opinion, that But them high, I think it's a bit too strong to be just check folded. And of course hitting 10 or 7 might be good as well. But like if you have, let's say, 8-7 type of hand with one spade, I think it's often pretty sort of nasty to be calling because your flush draw is not really that good. Trying to semi-bluff on the top left. Can't really call quite that deep. And set up. Oh well. Oh well. Well, I was actually way ahead, but Will then hits the gut shot. Oh well, would have been nice to win that 50 euro. Because again, from the second place you don't really get that much. Well, some real garbage on the upper right. Oh well. It's a bit too weak to call against most people. He did shove like 13 big blinds, so what the heck happened here? I'm just wondering that why the hell didn't this guy shove the Jack 7 suited? Okay. Decided to min raise. I don't really like that option with, well, not really something you want to do in general most of the time, but especially with the Jack 7 shooter, that is definitely plus E, clearly plus EV to solve overall. Looking pretty nasty on the bottom left. This is probably from Finland. Munapää. Dickhead would be the, or egghead would be the direct translation. Well, King 10 is going to be decently strong on the bottom left. Yeah, the 8 is actually playing. Yeah, I think I go with his it's not really that great situation. Well, it actually was pretty great. It was. Was indeed. And yeah, lost the flipped here as well. Actually playing the table. I suppose I probably have to call because, well, he might have the AX, but or 5x. He did have the pretty decent price too. Oh well. Let's limp with the 10-9. Definitely don't want to min raise and face shove. And can't reset mine on the bottom right. Well, it's pretty decent bluff catching hand. Well, I didn't really think about 3-6 completing. Oh well. Three, 6. Well, that was nasty. Well, I kind of have to call 8x. Well, these guys make stupid plays, so he might have the 8x, but would he really play the 8x often like that? Queen 7. Solid stuff. Luckily he didn't have the Jack 7. And trips on the top right. And there was also some decent amount of busted straight draws. Jack deuce 5-3 or something. Well, now we actually have decent hand. Oh. Or not. Well, in the river, check folding would be a decent option as well, but I really don't like check calling. I don't think it makes that much sense, because most of the hands that has showdown value will be checking back, and when he takes that line, he has huge amount of showdown hands, or I mean, well, yeah, hands that has some showdown, but not necessarily that premium holdings. But and this is pretty nice. I think I don't really want to shove with quite this deep stack, but let's hope that he doesn't check shove now. And double gut shot on the top left. And then shoving the river. Hopefully he doesn't have some ace queen or something. Oh well, couldn't fold out the check, it seems. Yeah, I think that play was pretty good overall. It's one of the very few hands that I would try the triple barrel here. Well, I only have like 1.5 big blind left, so let's hope for a miracle. Well, probably losing unless there is king, which might or might not be good. Well, I suppose there is small chance that king high might be the best, but that's pretty small at that point. And really crappy flop on the bottom left. Especially big blind frames will be nailing it. Oh, the other guy was actually bluffing, but unfortunately the other opponent had the AX. There would actually be pretty good chance that I would have won here if he had weaker than AX, so that he might have folded to turn bet because he was betting into empty side. But so. Oh, there is pretty big spider for Finnish spider on the wall, looking like, I think it's like 1.5 centimeter or something. Probably biggest that I have seen. I don't really tend to kill any spiders because they are not dangerous to humans here in the Finland, and they eat all sort of small stuff. Got shot on the bottom right and backdoor flush draw. And pretty deep stacks, so if it would come, it would have pretty decent implied odds. And there might be some chance to semi-bluff sometimes. Well, let's go for like 3-bet on the top right. Not doing it that often with this sort of hand, but sometimes. And it's kind of nice position because usually cutoff is not calling that much. It depends on the villain, of course, but it's quite often that villain will be folding or four betting. Kind of mandatory call on the top left. And now we hope that he checks back. Calling the river would not have been that great anymore. Or it's not great to call the turn either, but blocking the value combos with the top pair and having the open-end straight draw obviously qualifies as calling hand most of the time. Yeah, stream seems to be working nicely, at least from my data. Today and previous time I streamed, there has been no dropped frames at all. Well, let's bet we have some backdoor stuff with the 9-6. Well, chance for big stack. Oh well. Setups is definitely something I wouldn't need for this session. Haven't been that great so far. So we are not that much on the minus side either. Well, this will be shoving hand unless this guy 3-bets. Kind of nasty flop on the top left. Problem is that it's pretty tough to kings versus aces, jacks versus queens. Oh, Jesus. Oh, well. It's pretty nice hand on the top left to use as a re-steal. Now we have a lot of equity, which doesn't help. obviously calling on the top right if he bets. Once he checks, I think I have the best hand. Almost always. Oh well. We'll actually fold the ace-9 here. I mean, this guy betting into 5-way pot, his range is going to be pretty solid. And even if I happen to beat him, there are still 3 players behind. And he had 2 pairs. I would have actually sucked out, but he had better one. Yeah, that was pretty nasty. 25 euro. Look at jacks and kings and twice running into bigger one. Oh well, I have to fold that. There would be one option to just limp here to prevent that sort of situation. Kind of tricky situation on the outer table. I think I kind of want to raise, but I open raise pre-flop, he bet 3 street. The ugly part is if he's lost here. Oh well, I probably have to call, I don't know. Of course he has the flush. I don't know, just calling seems weak and I don't know, maybe it should be a raise fold then if you raise. Yeah, we need to be like 1 out of 4 times. 1 out of 4 times good tier. I will raise call with the king jack. 600. Well, I can't really call. I was just thinking that he doesn't have the 6x that often, so it shouldn't be that big possibility to face. Well, of course he might have like bigger flush draw or something like that as well. Get fives. I don't know, this guy doesn't usually open 3x, I think, but would have been reasonable to 3-bet shove with over 30 big blind. Obviously not that great necessarily. Well, in the outer table, check raised combo draw and stacking all. And can't hit. Well, I was actually equity favorite here. I think it quite decently as well, because I had also 3 outs from the high card. No, you can fold here, obviously. Some people probably won't really bluff here, and some might be over bluffing and so on. I'll actually fold the crappy king X in that stack situation. Let's check. Balance the checking range. He probably doesn't try to bluff, but maybe he rolls with something if I just... Oh, jeez. One absurd session, I have to say. Well, that wasn't hero call. Basically a bit over 200 euros on the minus side. That seems like pretty absurd stack of... Pretty loose call, I would say. Yeah. I don't think it's even even international that one. Wow, straight this time. Okay, that was big enough bet that I just give up break to me. Kind of close, whatever to limp or shove, I would say. So vulnerable that second paired here that I think betting has a lot of merit overall. I actually got shot here, so let's try double barrel and some king a7 x queen x to fold mainly. Some jack 9, maybe jack 10. Was just going to say that this chip leader has been really passive, but shoving right away. Yeah, I'm not happy about it, but I think for pocket fours is kind of really close to mandatory call. And somehow evaded. Zillion outs on the river. Well, that's one sizable c-bet, if nothing else. I will actually shove here on the bottom left. It's actually pretty decent spot. I mean, hand and situation wise. And we sucked out nicely. That's one of the good sides of that hand, that you are actually alive really often, unless you run into pocket kings plus or ace king. And it's also suited. And jacks versus aces on the outer table. That's getting pretty old. Kind of interesting that he checks the flop and then bets the turn and river when the... Well, it's not too likely that I have the ace necessarily, but... No king, thank you. Now some action on the bottom right as well. Actually have 325 euros in registration now. Well, chip leader should be shoving any two on that situation. And we won that one as well. Seven. Okay. But yeah, that was pretty mandatory shove. It's quite a disaster to be limp folding 8-9 suited with... I had like 12 or 13 big PP, I think. But still on the whole, even with those three wins, has been, I think, well, I did guess that 150 euro, I think, but that was also just second place, so I checked back the queen jack because I really don't necessarily get better hands to fold, so I mean a high should pretty much never fold, and king high might not be too eager to fold either. So let's just try to get to showdown if possible. I mean, with a high, I would actually often see bet here for value, but can't really do that with queen jack. And it's not like I would definitely see bet as well, like 9 high, maybe 10 high type of hands and so on. But queen jack definitely has some showdown value also. I don't know if I should get the 10 euro game, because usually what happens is that you get the 10 euro running for a moment and then you have too many bigger tables starting. Let's limp. Not the greatest of flops. Nasty part is if I'll make like 2.5 pp raise and will lane shoves, it's not really a hand you want to raise call, but ugly to raise fold as well. And shoving over 20 or 20 pp deep is pretty awkward as well. Oh yeah, for tomorrow, if we go for that music concert, whatever it was, concert, I think it's kind of a like if we go with the boat, because it's going to be really sunny hot day, so probably need to get some sun protection with the water reflecting and direct sunlight. It might be burning the skin quite nicely. Well, let's take one 10 euro. Seems like the bigger ones are not starting quick enough. There's definitely a lot of merit to see bet here, because it's very likely that overcard will come on the board if I check back. And most likely the best hand. Of course nasty if we check raises, but it's also kind of mandatory bet call as default. Bit smaller flop on the bottom right would have been nice. This is actually turn that is good for my range over also. It's go for lead dog bet, mixing in some semi bluffs also. Kind of nasty if he shoves now. That's actually a situation where you could even go for over shove if you want, in my opinion, because basically my value range will be trips, so I have trips or air. So it's pretty extremely polarized spot. Because of that, even like 1.5x shoving would be totally fine. Four players now on the €50. I don't know. Basically, I think all options are pretty reasonable in the top left king check. Limp checking has some merit, pretty decent post of playability hand, and so on raise call has some merit, and shoving is not bad either. And that was one of the outs. Nice to hit once it gives that sort of flop. Oh, accidentally 3 exit on the bottom left. Min bet from position. Some sort of weak king, perhaps. Or ace, or nuts actually. Okay. Yeah. Some AX would have made sense as well, but I suppose if you want to use that sort of sizings, it's good to balance with the nuts. Well, didn't really want to see the ace. So basically this guy doesn't have that many AX. Munapa might have a bit more often. At least some suited ace with the backdoor flush draw would make some sense, but once they both check and I have the best best queen x possible. I think I kind of have the value, but hopefully he doesn't have kings. That would have made quite a bit of sense overall. I'm not going to check back in the bottom right. Yeah, I would say that these are pretty profitable. But yeah, recent run has been pretty bad, but I don't think there are that many like really good players. But of course the tricky part, like my ROI this year has been something like 6%, I think, in these games. In previous year it was 12 to 13%, if I remember correct. But of course without any sort of tracking, it's kind of tough to say that what the real EV has been this year or previous year. On the top left I will call the small blind, even though he has been limping like every time. He might be trapping, but we are only like 8 big blind deep, so if he happens to be trapping, then so be it. Maybe we suck out. Yeah, well, the rake pack is not really that good, but the point is that the rake itself is really small. I think it was like, well, I don't remember anymore what was it exactly, but I think it was around 5% or something. And these are, like, if you compare to, for example, to Poker Stars, these are basically like turbo games. So the rake is really not that bad. I will try to semi-bluff once they check the flop. It will decrease the king x at least quite a bit from their range. But well, if you put in some heavy volume, you can have like, I think, up to 60% rake back here, but it does require quite a bit. This guy just keeps limping. Of course, in this situation, he really shouldn't be limp calling without basically big pocket pair, but let's just check back this time. Make single step. Like if he had called, I would have just given up here and that's it. But he seems to be playing really straightforward. Split pot probably, or did my 5 actually placed here? That's quite a lucky run out. And suited queen, obviously. Mandatory shove. Let's go for. I think Little King was. I think it's familiar sounding nick. So in general, I'm more happy to be making like 3-bets against regular type of players because usually you get more folds out of them, and recreational players tend to be more of where is the fold button type of players. But this is actually like jackpot flop without making the mate hand on the bottom right. So let's just see, but we might get some better A-highs as well to fold. And if I bet around that, if he will lane calls, we can then shove pretty much any river if we want. This guy seems like pretty nice heads-up opponent. Well, because he seems to play really tight passive type of game. Of course, the downside on this site in general is that one, you don't have the tracking side, and you don't have any third party tools. Well, I suppose if we ever want to semi-bluff any hand, this is pretty reasonable on the bottom right, but this is really flop that I wouldn't be semi-bluffing much at all. I suppose we sometimes have like pocket 8s or king 8 or ace 8 that we can check raise for value as well, so if we want to do that, then we want to have some semi-bluffs as default as well. Oh, he was really short stack, or actually automatic all in. I was wondering, like, did he call with that or something? And it's basically empty sideboard on the top right. On the top left, it's basically draw with flop, but if the will lane range is somewhat reasonable, he shouldn't really have that many draws here, and I definitely can't be folding here. And basically call will be quite committing, so I think I just shove. He might bet call with some weaker 10x's, or if he has some good draws, he's basically committed to call. And seems like my hand is the best one when it takes that long to decide. Yeah, that's the MTTs are tends to have higher variance. Of course, you also have a higher ROI, so it will balance it out somewhat. And depends heavily on what sort of MTT you want to play. Like if you prefer some poker stars, massive fields, then the variance will be pretty absurd. But then if you play those lot of smaller fields that are easily found on the other sides, then it's not as bad. Not as bad. And yeah, I have been playing like one of the usual MTTs I play on this side because I tend to start the session like somewhere around 8 to 9 on the evening, so I tend to play one of those 25 euro MTTs here. But have been mainly playing on this side, so the SNC side is the main game. Yeah, that's true on the MTT that ICM most of the time is not the concern, but of course the exceptions are the final table and somewhat on the close to the bubble. That's the quite common thing that you have some ICM on the bubble, and if you get over that, then it's going to be pretty much a PV to final table or maybe to two last tables and so on. Well, did I run into flush once again? But it's pretty passive line if he has actually. Yeah, this is one of those situations that I personally can't really fold. He might have some weaker two pairs. But he has the flush. Oh well, just had to give that jack on the river, because if I had just the king jack one pair, I would have easy fold overall, or not necessarily easy fold, but would have likely folded anyway. Nasty river. Nasty river. Another 50 euro down the drain, so to say. It's pretty rare to see people play flush that passively. It's not bad play at all to mix in sometimes, but but yeah, like overall, I will shove the pocket fours here. Hopefully, big blind doesn't wake up. Well, the small stack did wake up, but that's not quite as bad. Well, I would say that is decent looking flop on the bottom left. Well, when he bets that big, I think he's going to be bet calling extremely often, so just shove. Well, I really won't beat much if he bets, and I don't think I can really value bet either. Getting 8x to call is pretty tough probably. Also with the flush draw completing. Was a lot of actually no, not a lot of bad rivers because I had the nuts here. Let me erase the 3-2. Mainly, that is kind of situation that I will have pretty polarized small raising range. 9-8 pretty close, but I still fold. Decided to check back on the pre-flop. This is pretty nice spot to just shove, and we have a lot of equity if called. And it's really dry flop Jack 6 deuce rainbow, so it's probably going to look pretty strong. Pretty strong when we shove it here. Decided to just min raise this sort of crappy ace. We can decently happily fold. Let's hope that we don't run into nuts. It's always kind of worrisome in that sort of situation, but I think that player probably min raise folds bit too often, but in general, when Regi player min raises as mid stack, you have to be a bit worried that his range might be quite polarized. Yeah, well, some people seems to like those spin and goes, but I have to say that I'm not one of those guys. I don't know, like spin and goes, to me they are like basically high variance, decently small ROI and so on. So it seems like pretty bad combination. Yeah, they have weak player pool, that's the good side, but high rake and smallish ROI is kind of something that I don't like. And also you have kind of extra variance in that it's not just the way you end up with your hand, but it's also about how you happen to, like, basically the main point is that if you play those like for as main income or so on, as job, you basically, of course, you want to play seriously every game, and basically you want to get into situation where you would get quite close to break even with the €2 or the whatever 2x. I think it was 2x, the smallest prize pool game. So you want to get decently close to break even with them, or maybe on bit on the profit if possible, and then try to get the actual profit from those bigger multiplayer games. But that's the one thing that if you happen to run bad on the bigger multiplayer games, then it quite quickly gets. I think if I just call here, it will look kind of trappy. So I think shoving against the Regi player on the bottom left is more reasonable. It's another story if we would have been much deeper stacked. Sack 6, in the NAS it would be up to 5.6 BPs. Now let's just give up. I suppose calling would be reasonable as well. Limping. Can't really make small raise on the bottom left. Just open folding as middle stacked here, and these are always kind of like if you see bet here, the downside is that if you face check raise, you are in awkward situation, and you might not get called from that many weaker hands, but at the same time you have best hand really often, and it's going to be a really vulnerable one, because yeah, here I have to call, obviously. Jesus, what turn. Only way I could lose the big pot pretty much. Give the 3 outer to second best hand. Well, let's balance our checking range on the bottom left. I think I actually check call. I mean, a lot of my range will be some sort of king high, maybe 8x and so on. Rarely have the AX, so to have some of those like stronger hands in the checking range is definitely decent line. Well, shoving is probably the sort of, though I don't have that many bluffs here. Like maybe we can turn some sort of in here. King high is definitely strong enough to call. Unfortunately, he hits the 5. 6-4 to win. Unfortunately not. Now we are the smallest stack. Well, a bit worrisome looking that he limps, but I don't think, like, yeah, I can just call here as well, but it's pretty draw to flop, so I will just shove here. Wasn't trapping this time at least. And ace-3 will be mandatory call, even though that guy had been pretty passive, I think. Can't call with ace-3 as middle stacked here. Well, it seems like we might have a bit of action dying, but and obviously stacking off. That was one good 9. Well, nice that I won this time. There was pretty similar situation some time ago and lost 10. I think it is pretty close. I'm not totally sure, but it can't be too horrible. I'm still so even stacked with the small stacked here that let's raise the limper with the 7 deuce monster. A decent flop overall for my range, that is. And pocket nines. Yeah, let's just ISO. So calling with king deuce. Wow, that's pretty optimistic stuff. Well, yeah, I only had 5 big blinds, but I still think that it's so easily going to be dominated and have to call the ace 4. It's 66 or /33, so 2-1. Basically, quite close to same as in the stars as well. Ahead, and it held. Tämän mosquito sääskenperhana in Finnish. And queen 8, I will just shove. It's a bit too strong to be limp folded. Like if we check the, well, in the NAS it would be up to 13 big blinds, and pretty unfortunate collide with the aces, but actually a lot of outs on that flop. The main good point of those spin and goes and similar formats on other sites is the weak player pool. I don't think there is really any other good side, considering with how big the rake is in them. Like I think it's close to something like 8% or something, and it's really hyper format. So well, I would have called against 3 big blind raise on the upper right, but 5 big blind is bit too expensive. Seems like we have the 50 euros starting maybe soon. 4 players currently. Might start or might not start. And 2 pairs on the upper right. This is pretty much bet on most runouts. Oh well. Well, 7 is actually cards that lets me fold pretty easily if he continues to fire. Because now even if he has like 9-7, 5-7, those are ahead, and even if he has like ace 10 or something for some reason. But yeah, I might have heroed on the, or called on the blank river, but not really great spot. Not really great spot overall. And Jack 9 will be open shove. And ace deuce is too weak. I would call something like ace 7, ace 8 off. Maybe any suited ace, but crappiest offsuit ace is definitely foldable here. Yeah, it's 66-33. So 2/3 of the winner and 1/3 of the second place. I think exactly pretty much. Just checking back the Jack deuce on the bottom left if they will lane check. You can value bet on the turn, but it's pretty thin to try to get 2 streets, so now we can bet pretty safely. Well, sometimes he might have better Jack X, but most of time it's going to be best hand. And I have, I think it was 90-second or 80-second delay on the stream. Well, that's nice flop. Definitely betting flop. There are quite a few semi bluffs I might have here as well. Pair, but it's not really great flop on the top left. Decided to just call on the top left, top right, because I actually have a little bit of showdown value with my hand as well, but not this time. I think I prefer to just open shove and not give the chip leader regular any chance to 3-bet me. Obviously, if I'm in race, I have to stack off against these short stacks anyway. So how did he get the big stack? It was just blind versus blind shove. Well, I have to shove this suited. If it was offsuit, I would fold, but don't really love the situation. Unfortunately, I double up him. It's kind of a, well, in that sort of situation, you in the upper left, you can, if the wheel lane is like a bit too tight, you can shove any two profitably. But I would usually open fold total garbage, but most of the suited hands will still be good enough, and trying to just pot control on the top left. Nine five is pretty much the weakest suited hand. I would shove it here. Almost held is correct, I think. Nice wheel lane hitting the king on the river and not betting. And king jack is mandatory shove. And queen is basically blanked here. And ace queen is obviously strong enough. Basically whatever happens. Only case would be if this guy raised like this and this guy shoves, then it's actually quite a nasty spot. No do, well deuce is not the problem anymore. With the queen I have. That was nice setup. And raise calling on the top left. He had top set. Well, I still had decent equity here. And 10 is pretty nutty on the heads up. Let's go for check raise. In this sort of situation I often tend to check call if I have trips with the backdoor flush draw, so you have a bit of protection against run out if it comes like heart or heart on the turn and so on. Then prefer to check raise more of those. Not always without the heart as well, but more often. Let's try to see bet on the upper right. And I think on the top left we have to go for bet. Let's hope that he doesn't have the trips. It depends on the turn pretty much. That one actually opened some of the draws, but if it was total blank, I would often just check the turn to balance the check back range. Such a huge sizing. I would kind of like to check raise, but against that sizing I can't really do that. And really draw the flop on the bottom right, so let's make sizable c-bet. And fucking 6. Jesus, this site loves to screw me up. That's the last river card I wanted to see, but actually still ahead. Still somehow ahead. That was nasty to lose the ace-6. Ace-3 versus ace-6. Hopefully no 9. And 6-5 is mandatory. Mandatory shove. Jack deuce off. Well, I would have folded in his shoes, but I mean, I don't really shove wider than S against decent regulars here, so but he shouldn't really be calling wider than S. Let's see how deep we were exactly. Yeah, it was like 6 pp deep, so Jack deuce off in the NAS would be 4.6 pp, so a bit wider than the NAS, but I suppose it's not absurd necessarily. Well, now we managed to induce some really loose shove. Okay, have to check back the river and hope for best. Okay. Royal flush. That was enough. Okay, I think I played these to the end and then quit the session. It has been, I think, 3.5 hours. Ace-3 is pretty marginal here from the cutoff. I think it tends to be a bit minus EV without NDs. So there is €3.25 and €2.50. Well, this one guy in the outer table, 4x opening all the time, can't really. Would be the kind quite nice hand to defend for 6 suited, but against that sizing it's not plausible. And this other guy is 4xing as well. We seem to have moved back to some sort of 2005 or something. That was big flip. Let's make small c-bet on the top left, though it's going to be awkward if we check raises. Well, I can't really call, but that's one weird looking line. Really weird looking line. Let's min raise on the bottom left, decently playable hand. And this is actually not, again, that bad flop. So unfortunately he doesn't fold, and I don't have anything, so this will be just give up spot. Luckily no deuce or 4. Nasty to fold queen jack suited, but well, obviously snap fold in that situation, but still it's going to be nasty to fold. Kind of interesting flop. Seems like my light raises doesn't really create any fold equity now. Well, now it looks pretty nice hand. Yeah, main point why I tend to be raising those really crappy hands is that I want to have a very polarized range overall when raising again from the big blind against the small blind, because basically you don't want to necessarily raise that much. I will actually fire here again because it's such a nice scare card. Usually I don't do this sort of bluffs much, but let's try this time. It's not a scary card against his range most of the time. Well, maybe not this time. Maybe not this time. And pocket 6. 6 is obviously call and losing 80%. 81% and something like that. A6 is too weak. Too much ICM. Oh well, 80-20 favorite and losing in the heads up. Well, that happens. That happens. Some nice cards would be nice on the upper right. Seems to be nastily aggressive, this chip leader. Hopefully he shouts now, because I can't shout this one. I just beat on the top left. Fold. Oh, I got Volk. Nice, nice. Well, at first it felt really weird when I moved here from the sites that I had been using the HUD. Like extremely weird to play, but I think that now that I have played longer without HUD, it's not really that much of issue. Of course, you don't have as much data on the opponents, so it's more about default lines, and of course trying to remember if something has happened, and some players that don't change the nicks, you can have some reads and so on. But and yeah, he folded on the top left. Nasty when I just can't get any hands on the upper right. King 4. Seven deuce. How about Volk? Nope. Nope. Just can't shout that sort of crap. I think I will just bet call on the some random opponent can easily have. And then I'm dominated. Oh, Jesus. That's exactly my sort of luck. Exactly my sort of luck. Guarded for 8 Gs and then finally getting something. 10 deuce. That was quite a hand. Yeah, I think I saw the ace 8 against the chip leader as clearly smaller stack. Problem is that I might not have much fold equity, but then just hoping for best. Let's check back the nut flush draw. It's nice hand because you have decent showdown value anyway. Well, I think I just raise here and hope he has something. Of course you can call as well and hope that he bombs the river when we show weakness, but without such read I tend to raise here. Also, one thing to remember about HUDs in general, especially when playing MTTs, is that most often you don't have that many hands on the opponent. So basically, it's often that only the basic like VPI, PPFR type of statistics have enough data to really make a good read from them. Double gutshot overcard. Yeah, I think I just go for bet and obviously stack off if he shoves. But luckily he just folded. Like I have often said about HUDs in general, that most important statistics in the HUD is hand amount. Ace 10. I don't really want to raise 3-bet fold. I don't really want to shove that much either. Let's call. Pretty small sizing. I think we can call with the spade as well. A high has decent showdown value. So if he double barrels, I will be folding and just check folding the river as well. Betting doesn't make any sense really. Especially when if there was like spade on the river, I might try to bet and get some like 6x's, pocket 8s, or like pocket 7s, some better A highs to fold, but when it's basically blank river, if I bet here, villain might just call with ace queen. Yeah, I think I go for non all in here with the 8 big blind. Pretty much the weakest hand. Weakest offsuit. Jack X I would go with. So have you played long poker for how long? And ace 4, mandatory call. Do we get in heads up? Seems like it. And this guy has just queen high. And king 3 will be mass calling hand. And this guy has been pretty active, so let's make the call. And very easy limp call with the queen 9. Flop is not really that great. just check and see if we get some equity. On the bottom left, shoving is decent option. And well, let's stab this time. Well, I don't know. I suppose this is quite decent bluff combo because I don't have heart and so on. And I don't really like to continue with this sort of hand on the heads up. Like hitting 9 or 6 might or might not be good, and it's pretty much same with the weak flush. So it's totally fine to just give up. And let's raise with the 4-6. I could also go for 3.5x. 3.5x raise. And ace-8 suited, I think I ISO on the ace-8 off. I would tend to fold from the small blind, but suited is too strong. And practical nuts on the bottom left. And this is actually quite decent limp calling hand. Plays well post flop and quite a setup on the, luckily for me, on the better side of it. And 9-7 is not really calling hand. On the bottom left, that hand is almost always the best one, so let's make c-bet. Well, club is really not something to hope for. I think I just try to get to showdown if possible. That's the downside of c-betting, but at the same time, check raising is going to happen quite rarely usually. And jack 8 will be calling hand, I think. Well, it's quite reasonable hand to call with. And straight on the bottom left. would have probably called on the top left if the button didn't raise. There's good chance to get into showdown by because it would have been empty side, but pretty much. Do we hold? We do. So actually got decent result from this one, from the session. Well, winning that 50 euro would make it pretty great, or not great necessarily, but on the very good area anyway. Let's flip these promotion things that usually don't give anything decent. Well, this is the worst, one of the worst runs I have had in these. But basically you need to, like, I think 2 or 3 correct to get free roll tickets. Then there was some 10 euro satellite ticket and something like that. Let's shout the ace 9. I don't really want to raise fold or raise call that much. Now we got only 1 token back, so we can play one more time. I think this promotion has been like pretty much the worst I have seen in this site. No queen, thank you. Uh, 10-8 I can shove, I think, but let's make the limp. It would be plus or at least somewhat break even to shove, but it's pretty decent limping hand as well. And time to double parallel. I think this is one of the pretty much best bluff combos I can have. No diamond blocking the straight draws, or straights I mean. And luckily he folded. Always feels good when you fire that third barrel and Will Lane gives up. I probably didn't. Did I win anything from these? Oh, 1 free roll ticket. Wow. No spade, thank you. Well, that heads up went smoothly. So that was the session for today. And was good enough that we got actually pretty solid result, 270 euros plus. So that was pretty nice session in the end, considering that it was like minus 250 at some point, I think, or 200 or something like that. But yeah, that was for today. Not sure when I stream, probably on the Monday, probably on the Monday, but I will be posting on the Poker Strategy forum at least, and maybe on the Poker iMania, and also putting out the coming stream, know this thing on the YouTube channel at some point. But yeah, thanks for watching and thanks for the comments, Matti. But good evening and luck on the games if you are playing. Bye for now.